In this video, we are going to talk about how to sell a home in a buyer's market. In the past, in Central Florida and elsewhere, it's been a seller's market, which is a completely different strategy to sell a house in a seller's market than it is in a buyer's market. So in a buyer's market, you're going to have a lot more inventory, a lot more competition. So one of the most important things to do in a buyer's market, if as a seller, is to price the property correctly. You're going to want your real estate agent to do a comparative market analysis where they can analyze other properties in the neighborhood. You might also want to look at the active listings yourself so you can see how they compare in the features, the upgrades, the condition, how many bedrooms, how many bathrooms, square footage, just to get an idea of what properties are actively for sale, which that's your competition, versus the properties that are selling. One of the things that's very important is not to price yourself out of the market. If you price yourself too high, then you're just going to sit on the market and you're not going to sell. There's actually strategies where you can price yourself a little bit under the current market to drive up more interest and therefore increase your sales price at the end of the day. So you really want to be thoughtful. Don't just ready, aim, shoot, do your research and figure out what the right price will be to put your property in the best position to sell as quickly as possible. As we all know, when it's a buyer's market and you're a seller, you need to have a little bit of patience. But if you price yourself too high, patience isn't going to help you because you're not going to sell. So the most important thing, I cannot stress enough, is to price the property accurately. Be open to price reductions. If your house has been sitting on the market for a couple weeks, a couple months, depending on how long in your market it's taking to sell, be open to doing a price reduction. A price reduction doesn't necessarily mean that you look desperate. Obviously, you want to be mindful as to when you do and how often you do price reductions. But think about doing a price reduction. A lot of times that reduction can drive up interest and can be just the thing that you need to get the property sold. There's other things that you can do to set yourself apart, such as curb appeal. What's going to make you stand out from the other houses in your neighborhood? Maybe you do a little bit of landscaping, maybe a fresh coat of paint. Also, doing things inside the house, very important, declutter. Move things, put things away. A lot of times buyers that are walking through houses, they don't really see the whole vision of what the house could be. And if you have too much clutter, the house tends to look smaller than it actually is. So you want to make sure you put as many items away as possible. Also, you want to make sure the house smells nice. Now, this doesn't mean to put a bunch of fragrances in the house because sometimes buyers can be sensitive to smells, but you want to make sure it smells clean and fresh. So that would be something that I would highly recommend. Another thing you're going to want to do is depersonalize the home. Now, I'm not saying you have to take everything outside of the house, but generally if you have a lot of pictures sitting around on tables, you want the buyer to be able to walk through the house and visualize themselves living there. So anything you can do to depersonalize, the perfect's the enemy of the good, but anything you can do to depersonalize will help show the home better. Another thing you can do to help your home stand out from the rest is staging. Staging is optional. You don't have to do it if you have furniture in your house, but it is usually better to have some furniture in main living areas, dining rooms, kitchens, and maybe the primary bedroom. If the house is vacant, it is hard for buyers to visualize where they would put furniture and things like that. So staging is definitely highly recommended in order to sell a home faster. Sometimes staging can be a little bit expensive and maybe isn't the right thing for you, but there are things that are really cool with technology nowadays. A lot of people can do photographs with virtual staging. You would have to disclose that on the MLS, but that is another option as to real staging of furniture. One of the other things that you're going to want to do is you're going to want to clean the house. Scrub the baseboards, clean the blinds, make sure that there's proper lighting, do small repairs. Replace your light bulbs if your light bulbs are out. If a faucet's leaking, fix the faucet. Little things like that make a big difference. Caulking showers, things like that. They don't like to see, cracked caulk in the showers. That's something super cheap and easy to do. So those little minor repairs, when you walk through your house and you kind of look at it from a buyer's eyes, they're going to notice those little things, and that might be the small little difference that makes them make an offer on your house as opposed to the house next door. Another thing you're going to want to make sure that you have as a seller, and I would say this isn't just for a buyer's market, this is really for any market, but it's even more important in a buyer's market, is to have professional photos. I can't tell you how many agents just go in houses and just take pictures with their phone. They don't have the lights on, they're not angled correctly, you can't really see the house, there's no editing done, and it makes me cringe because you're not really representing that house properly or in the best interest for it to sell. So you need to have professional photos, professional lighting, a professional photographer. Those things are extremely important in order to present yourself best and set yourself apart from the competition. Another thing that you can consider offering is incentives to buyers. When you have a competitive market, it's good, especially if you have a good agent. I typically will ask buyers, agents on our listings, what the buyer's needs are. So a lot of buyers may be struggling to come up with enough cash for closing costs. So offering some sort of credit back towards closing costs also can be something helpful. I noticed that some out-of-state buyers, more so than Florida buyers, are interested in a home warranty. So that's also something that you can offer if the buyer is interested in it to set yourself apart from the competition. You can also get creative with buying down mortgage rates. There's other things you can work with lenders to do and offer certain things. Any of these incentives that you can offer to a buyer that sets yourself apart from the competition just makes you more attractive than the other seller that will not offer the same things. So you're going to want to consider what you're willing to offer, how you want to present that, work with your agent, talk to them about the best way to present that to a buyer or a buyer's agent. One of the things that is important when you're in a buyer's market is to be a little more flexible. For example, be a little more flexible with the inspection dates, a little more flexible with closing dates. Just work with the buyers, right? This is a people business, and people like to work with people they like. So if you're a little more flexible and less rigid with some of the buyers' timetables, maybe they need to close a little later, maybe they're selling a house, stuff like that. Those are things that are very important in a buyer's market. So with a skilled agent, that's probably the most important thing you need, honestly, in any market, but especially in a buyer's market, because it's going to be harder, more work, more time consuming to get the property sold. So you want to make sure you have a buyer's agent who is mindful of all of the different things that buyers are looking for and all the different things that can get the deal under contract that is creative and thoughtful, that might not be thought of on your own or, without the guidance of an experienced agent. In a buyer's market, you're going to want to make sure that you are ready for last minute showings at any time. So you want to always have your house show ready, at least where you could just clean up, pick up a few things and ready to have buyers come in. Be flexible with your showing times. Sometimes buyers, they work or they have schedules with their kids. They can't come at certain times. So you never know when it's going to be that buyer that's going to put the offer in, and you don't want to turn them down for a showing just because you're not ready. So the best advice I can give in that regard is to just be ready for showings, be flexible, be accommodating. Remember, it's a buyer's market. It's a competition. So you want to sell your house. So make sure that you're ready for the buyer to come in and see it. This is a very important point that we know our sellers don't love. However, it is extremely important to be prepared to get low-priced offers when you're in a buyer's market. I try to explain to my sellers, don't be upset about an offer. Any offer is better than no offer, right? You can always counter the offer. You can negotiate some sort of concessions. In a buyer's market, if you think of it from a buyer's perspective, they're going to come in lower. they know it's a buyer's market. They understand the market too, so why not come in lower? A lot of times they're expecting you to counter. So sometimes sellers will get upset, and I understand that, but always just know your numbers, know where you're at, and be prepared to counter an offer, even if it's a low ball offer. That's my best advice. You never know what a buyer will come up to. If they love the house and they really want the house, sometimes they'll come up more than you think they will. So you just have to kind of figure that out and navigate it, but just be prepared in a buyer's market. You're gonna get those low ball offers, so just try not to get too emotional about it. We know it's your home and we know that it's sensitive, but that is something that you can just expect in that type of market. To recap, in a buyer's market, you're gonna wanna make sure you price your home competitively. You're gonna wanna make sure that you have it show ready all the time as quickly as possible. Also, you wanna make sure you have professional photos marketing, and you also want to be patient, yet ready to negotiate when an offer comes in. So those are the best strategies you can to be successful. Yes, you can sell your house in a buyer's market. Reach out to us today. We'd love to help you.